Hi everyone, welcome to the Whiteleyverse with me, Connor Whiteley, for another daily story with a chapter from one of my novellas. Before I start today's chapter, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to buy this book and any of my other fiction, then they're all available from all major ebook retailers. You can order the paperback and hardback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore and local library if you requested. Also, if you want the AI generated audiobook, then you can get it from selected audiobook platforms and library systems like Kobo, Spotify, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, Baker & Taylor, Biblioteca and Overdrive. Now, here's today's chapter. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did writing it.
Chapter 1. The 19th of April 2023. Canterbury, England. As much as Private Eye Bettie English had always loved her two beautiful baby twins, Harrison and Elizabeth, more than anything else in the entire world, she absolutely had to admit that them being 8 months old was her favorite month of development so far. She loved how at 8 months old, her little angels were always talking, playing and moving about or trying anyway. The three of them were sitting in the baby nursery, and Betty, flat out, loved it. Her and her boyfriend Graham had recently painted a very stimulating red, blue and orange forest on the wall facing the babies, and whilst Betty loved it because it was so striking, she really understood why her nephew Sean called it modern art. It might not have exactly looked like a typical forest, and it might have looked more like one of the babies vomiting paint on the wall in a pretty pattern, but Betty was damn proud of her painting skills, and she had really loved spending the time with Graham doing it. Betty sat on the cream carpet that felt like a delightful pillow under her bum, with Elizabeth and Harrison just babbling non-stop to each stop, as they all played with some bricks, teddies and plastic books that Betty was perfectly okay with the two twins using as suckers more than books. It wasn't even like the books were very interesting. They were just pictures at the end of the day, but they kept her precious angels interested, so Betty was more than happy with them. The bright white light reflected off the orange, baby blue and green walls perfectly. And Betty was just glad that the nursery's wall looked a hell of a lot more stylish than their mural did. Everything was stylish, tasteful, and Betty was really proud of everything she was building here with Graham. The love of her life. She had to admit that she wasn't sure when she first found out she was pregnant. Betty honestly didn't imagine her and Graham could do the whole having kids thing together, but she was so glad that she had tried. And now she was well and truly reaping the rewards. Harrison made a loud shriek and started laughing, and that simple beautiful sound just reminded Betty why she loved spending time with the kids. They both had on matching white little baby grows that Betty had picked out fresh for them. Graham had wanted them to wear something more interesting for when his mother turned up later on. But Betty didn't like the woman. She was loud, awful, and hated that she was still working even though Betty had children now. Betty wasn't giving up being a private eye for anything in the entire world, not even her little angels. She loved her job too much, and she was only a private eye 1 day a week anyway for the rest of the year. Someone pounded on the door. "I'll get it, Auntie," Sean said. "Thanks," Betty said, tickling Elizabeth and Harrison and falling onto the soft carpet with them both. All three of them laughing. And before Betty could even start to climb back up, her little demons were crawling on her and using Betty to try and stand up. As soon as they were up, they were both back down again, but Betty loved that they were trying. She was perfectly happy just laying there with the two babies all day playing. Or at least until beautiful Graham got back from work as a police detective, doing whatever he was doing today. Betty had to admit that Sean was taking a long time to see who was at the door. Him and his boyfriend had been living with Betty since last June because of a foul homophobic attack that had given Sean's boyfriend Harry a brain injury, and they were both recovering here after all the awful drama with Sean's mother. They were both just hanging out in his room with their best friends Eric and Nathan before a lecture later on. Betty couldn't imagine for the life of her who could be at the door and take Sean so long to answer. It couldn't be someone they knew, because Sean would have invited them into at least the living room and not the heart of the house. It couldn't be a political person who were knocking on doors campaigning for the local council elections in May, because Sean would have shut the door in their face. Everyone had already postal voted last week. And it couldn't be sexy Graham because he would have just come in, and he hadn't forgotten his keys, after Betty had rushed out before he drove off anyway. Harrison said, gently patting Betty on the cheek, and Elizabeth started tapping Betty's stomach. Yes, I am your mammy. Can you say mammy? Betty asked. N.A., Elizabeth said. Betty smiled. It was worth a try, she so badly wanted to be the kid's first word and not daddy or dada. After a few more moments, she heard Sean and another set of footsteps come in and shut the door behind them. Sean slowly came up the stairs and he just stood in the doorway, clearly upset. Betty sat up immediately, and just looked at her delightful nephew with his tasteful and stylish pink highlights in his blonde hair, and really wanted to know what was going on. She hated him being upset or sad. Can I talk to you, Auntie? Betty nodded. Sean turned his head back towards his bedroom. Babe, can you watch the kids for a minute? Betty's stomach twisted into a painful knot as she realized that Sean had something to tell her that he didn't want to say in front of the kids. It was deadly serious. Betty followed Sean downstairs and nodded her thanks to Harry, Eric and Nathan as they went down and into the living room. Betty was surprised to see Detective Kinsley, a fellow gay detective they had all worked with a few months before on a previous case, sitting on her large black sofa. He stood up and looked like he was going to tell her something awful. Then Betty realized that Graham wasn't home. Betty fell down onto the sofa and just looked at Sean. He took her by the hand and frowned, on the verge of tears. I'm so sorry, Auntie. Graham's dead.
Welcome back everyone, it's me again, Connor Whiteley. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, because I flat out love writing, creating stories and sharing them with you. If you really enjoyed today's story, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to buy this short story or any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get them from your local library if you requested, and you can order the paperback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. Lastly, if you want to support the channel on a one-off basis, then you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. Also, if you know anyone who would enjoy today's story, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help us spread the word about the channel. So, thanks for watching the Whiteleyverse, and I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone.